Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dakota Hufford. I am the Communications and Program Coordinator for the Clackamas River Basin Council. And I'm joined by Amy Barton, our Communications and Stewardship Manager. Thank you again for joining us today for our 4th of 7 webinars in our series designed to help you be a better steward to your land here in Clackamas Basin.
All right, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to share our land acknowledgement with you. Many of us are joining from Oregon and Washington, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize that we are gathered on the unceded land of many Native peoples. I ask you to join us in acknowledging the many communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. We thank those who came before us for their stewardship of these lands and waters, and those who continue to steward them now and into the future.
You. Okay, just a quick schedule. We're going to give you a very brief intro or reminder to who CRBC is. We're going to talk about why managing stormwater matters. We're going to get kind of into rain garden definition. We're going to talk about some technical steps to create one. We'll briefly discuss swales and then some other ways to manage stormwater. And then we will go on to a Q&A. So our goals for today are really just that you walk away with some ideas and resources for incorporating rain garden elements into your outside space. We do want to hear from you, but to save time, please save your questions for the end or just pop them into the chat and we will get to them at the end. And then go ahead and just leave your mic on mute because we are recording.
Here at the Clackamas River Basin Council, our mission is to foster partnerships for clean water, to improve fish and wildlife habitat, and enhance the quality of life for those who live, work, and recreate within the Clackamas River Basin. CRBC is a 501c3 nonprofit watershed council, and for the past 25 years, more than 25 years, we've been invested in restoring and protecting the Clackamas River and its tributaries. We do this through stream restoration projects. The photo on the left shows CRBC contractors installing large wood in a stream for fish habitat. We host volunteer events and educational workshops such as this, all free to the public. The image in the middle shows our down the river cleanup, where volunteers help us clean a 22-mile stretch of the Clackamas River to protect water quality. We also offer streamside residents with free weed removal and native tree and shrub planting, and we help residents with wildfire recovery. The image on the right is a freshly planted baby tree after the 2020 wildfires. The Clackamas River provides drinking water for over 300,000 Oregonians. That's 10% of the state. The image on the right shows areas that get their water from the Clackamas. The Clackamas River also provides habitat for threatened and endangered salmon and steelhead and is home to a host of lots of other wildlife. So I want to thank you again for joining us this afternoon and learning how to incorporate rain garden elements into your space.
Okay, and into the weeds we get. So impervious surfaces are their ground covers that water cannot penetrate. The images on the right here on this slide show some familiar examples of impervious surfaces at home, things like pavement, roofs, and asphalt. These impervious surfaces result in increased surface runoff when it rains, which causes damaging effects to our urban streams. As little as 10% of impervious cover within an area can result in actual stream degradation. Due to these surfaces, a typical city block generates more than 5 times more runoff than a woodland area of the same size. In the picture to the left, you can see a housing development in Clackamas County. There is very little buffer between the developed land and the river there. That close proximity makes the transport of materials from these surfaces much easier. Improperly or poorly managed rainwater runoff can have big impacts to populated areas such as flooding, soil erosion, pollution to the water, and subsequent stream degradation, and therefore loss of salmon habitat. The National Water Quality Inventory from EPA reported that runoff from urbanized areas is the leading source of water quality impairments to surveyed estuaries and the third largest source of impairments to surveyed lakes. So I won't read off all of these. This will come in an email if you want to look at it further, but there are a number of chemicals that make their way into water via these impervious surfaces and stormwater, which are known to suppress the immune and nervous systems of salmon, things like copper, zinc, and common cleaning supplies. So by slowing and sinking the rainwater in our yards and by foregoing chemical yard products as well, we do all contribute to the overall health of our streams for salmon, wildlife, and people. Reduced volumes and velocity of storm runoff to our streams means less pollution, less scouring of channels and erosion, and less loss of streamside vegetation and fish habitat. Groundwater is also replenished, which supplies water to streams through the dry seasons and keeps them cool. Water quality is also improved by the cleansing properties of soil, microbes, and plants.
So a solution to this rainwater runoff that Dakota is describing would be to direct that rainwater to a space where it can be absorbed. So this could be either a rain garden or a swale, or even incorporating elements of both into the garden that you already have. And these features work by receiving water from your downspouts, your driveway, and any other impervious surfaces, and allowing that water to slow and sink into the ground. And we'll talk about the differences between rain gardens and swales on the next slides. So a rain garden is a depressed area in the landscape that collects rainwater from a roof, driveway, or street and allows it to soak into the ground. Planted with grasses and flowering perennials, rain gardens can be a cost-effective and really beautiful way to reduce runoff from your property. Rain gardens can also help filter out any pollutants that the runoff rainwater may have collected along the way. These, wetted garden spaces also provide food and shelter for butterflies, songbirds, and a lot of other wildlife. There's a host of types and sizes of rain gardens out there. More complex rain gardens with drainage systems and amended soils are often referred to as bioretention. In this session, we're talking more about rain gardens designed for yards, home yards, as opposed to those more, larger commercial bioretention sites.
Okay, so we're going to get into some of the technical steps. The following information is a very brief overview of the 7 recommended technical steps involved in the creation of a rain garden. All of this information is derived from and elaborated on within the Oregon Rain Garden Guide, which is produced by the Sea Grant Oregon. And we're going to pop that a link to that in the chat right now, so everyone should have that. And yeah, so for folks looking to go the technical route, we highly, highly recommend this resource. Okay, so step 1 is to observe and map your site. You will want to walk through your yard and note any obvious slopes or low spots. Note areas where water might drain to your neighbors or public property. Cite your potential rain garden where water flowing into the garden will be higher than where water will naturally exit. You want to look for areas nearby with overflow, where overflow from a rain garden can be absorbed safely can be absorbed or safely directed into an approved stormwater collection point like a street side gutter or a storm drain. Step 2 is to determine the appropriate location for your rain garden. You will want to go with the flow. So the easiest place to build a rain garden is relatively close to a gutter or a downspout. You will want to respect the flow. Rain gardens must be designed to carefully capture and treat stormwater on site and then send the excess overflow during a large rainstorm off-site without damaging structures and other property. You will want to divert the flow. Rain gardens are designed to drain water to the soil layers below the garden for treatment. To ensure adequate drainage and treatment, while not polluting groundwater. Rain gardens should not be placed in the following areas: on top of a septic drain field, on top of a seasonal water table, and this one confused me, but they should not be placed on top of areas that stay wet all year, or soils that have poor drainage, like a wetland. You will want to check in with your county or city regulations for permitting and regulations. So for Clackamas County, you will want to start with the Clackamas Soil and Water Conservation District. They are a wealth of resources and knowledge and a good place to start. And then finally, for step 2, you will want to measure the slope. So an example of this is given on the screen here. It gives you the slope equation and then an example of how to use that. Okay, step 3 is assessing the soil. So you will want to test the infiltration and then interpret those results. Again, I recommend you reach out to the Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation District, or whichever county you're in, the Soil and Water Conservation District. They are very, very helpful for these projects. After you've done an infiltration test and interpreted those results, you will also want to determine the texture of your soil. For anybody following along in the guide, you can refer to pages 9 and 10 for the exact steps of how to determine the texture of your soil. So step 4, you're gonna determine the size. This is kind of a chunky step. You will want to determine depth. You'll always want to check again with your local planning department, public works, or land use, or stormwater utility folks before you get set on a design. If your local jurisdiction does not have recommended size calculation for a rain garden, then we recommend the size of a rain garden be at least 10% of the impervious surfaces draining to it. These gardens should ideally be between 6 and 24 inches deep. And a reminder to dig safely. If you don't already know about 811, you can call them and it is a free service. They come out and map out the gas and water lines on your property. So be sure to call them before you dig. You will want to then delineate your garden using a garden hose, strings, stakes, or marking paint, like in the picture here, to delineate the boundary of the garden on the site. Then you will want to get water to the garden. The garden will not actually be managing stormwater if it does not collect rain from your home's impervious surfaces. So that means you must find ways to get water from your collection points to your garden, sometimes by digging trenches, running gutter extenders, or even building artificial streams that run only when the rain falls. And the water may be routed using a pipe, rock tiles, or other hard surfaces, or a small swale lined with rocks can be inserted as well. You will want to disconnect your downspouts. This is an important part of the rain garden design, and you will, want to design for overflow as well. So you will want to go ahead and dig out any of the trenches that need to be dug. So step 5 is the construction type. Some considerations for excavation. You will want to plan to place the soils to the outside edge of the garden and away from the inflow point. These soils and any other type of material that come out of that can be formed to make amendments to create a berm on the side of the rain garden that depending on your terrain. The berms should be built to have at least 2 inches of height above the elevation of the outlet. And whether digging by hand or machine, you will want to excavate the soil from the outer edge of the garden to minimize that soil compaction. You will want to think about plumbing. The overflow point, either a swale or a pipe, should be at least 2 inches below the top of the berm on the downhill side. And then you'll want to think about amendments to your soil. Your soils may or may not need to be amended to ensure strong plant survival. It does help. And it helps promote microbial growth as well. So where possible, your existing soil should be tilled to 18 to 24 inches deep and then amended with compost topsoil or sand. So step 6 is the fun part. This is my favorite part. You get to pick your plants. So you will want to think about zones for plants. Plants vary in their tolerance of certain conditions such as shade, flooding, moisture, cold temperatures, while maintaining their ability to survive and grow. Rain gardens have zones that vary in wet and dry conditions and possibly sunlight and shade. So you just need to select your plants based on their tolerance to these conditions and then put them in the right zone to survive and thrive. You will definitely want to compost. This helps build the soil and hold the soil moisture, again, increases that microbial activity. It improves the soil's ability to filter and absorb pollutants and increases plant survival in the first few years. You will want to think about your plant characteristics. What is the plant's ultimate height and width? How big will it get? Will it look attractive next to the other thing? Does it flower? Does it fruit? Does it attract beneficial insects or wildlife? What is its seasonality? What is its shade tolerance? What are its temperatures requirements? All things to keep in mind. You will definitely want to mulch. Mulch is another important part of the rain garden. It will help shade the soil and keep it cool and may increase soil moisture during the dry summer and fall months. And then you'll want to think about watering. So even after you've chosen and carefully planted the right plant for the right place, and mulch the garden, it's definitely important to make sure that your new plants get sufficient water. Even though they're in that rain garden area, they will still need to be watered until they are established. And this is especially true if you are making your garden in the spring or summer. Okay, last step. And this is just maintenance. So this is the final process of long-term maintenance of your garden. This will include some weeding, pruning, and continual mulching. You do not want to drown your plants, even though we just talked about watering. You still do not want to drown them. So to make sure your plants at the base, you want to make sure that the plants specifically at the base of your garden don't drown in their first winter. Plants need air in the soil. So if you notice that there is a spot that stays consistently flooded, you might want to think about drawing that water out another way. All right, those are the technical steps. And now we'll talk about bioswales.
All right, so we are going to just ever so quickly touch on bioswales. Bioswales are a linear channel that receives runoff and slows it down with plants and rock or log check dams to increase infiltration and filter out pollutants. You see these along roads. Cities will install them to concentrate stormwater and filter pollution and other debris before it hits the catch basins. Swales installed along contour lines of a large slope can capture the rain runoff before it flows downslope and causes erosion. So you can see in the top image that the water will fill the trench along the slope and permeate into the soil instead of running straight down the hill and causing a bunch of erosion and other issues. And if building a technical rain garden is just not right for you, after hearing about the different steps, you can also consider some other stormwater management techniques for your yard that can be just as effective. So one option is to simply add compost to the soil to build a soil sponge. Adding compost will increase the pore space and allow the soil to absorb more water. You can also maintain a 2-inch layer of mulch to cover and protect the soil. And we highly recommend just taking that lawn out. You can do this with sheet mulching using cardboard, like in the picture on the right. I removed my lawn in my front yard and put a little garden in, and I can't be happier with it. You can also plant more trees and shrubs, especially on those slopes, to provide deeper root systems that prevent erosion and help absorb that rainfall. Mature trees provide significant rainwater benefits by absorbing rainfall through evapotranspiration. A tree with a 25-foot wide canopy can take up over 1,500 gallons from a 1-inch rainfall. So here in Portland, Portland streets and parks and park trees reduce surface water runoff by 3 million gallons per 1 inch of rainfall, which is 135 million gallons per year.
Okay, yes, and I know that we talk a lot about planting riparian native shrubs, but that's because it's so important. So these native riparian shrubs like being wet almost all year round, and so they are recommended to be planted in areas that stay wet, like slopes and in rain gardens. Some good example of species to put in these wet areas are swamp rose, Pacific ninebark, Douglas spirea, red osier dogwood, and the dagger leaf rush. And another grass that's highly recommended for a native grass that's highly recommended for these areas as well is tufted hairgrass. Okay, so another way that you can improve runoff situations in your yard is to remove or replace impervious pavements. You can replace them with things like grass block pavers, pervious concrete pavers, or a permeable concrete mix. Or you can do something like a hard pervious pathway. Examples of a hard pervious path are these flagstone steps or the pea gravel or the 1/4 inch gravel, as well as the recycled concrete. All of these will allow for that water infiltration. Or you could do away with the hard stuff altogether and opt for a soft pervious path. Something like a grass pathway, bark chips, or these little steps.
Okay, we also wanted to show this option with you. This is what's called a dry well. And a dry well is a good solution for directing and sinking water from downspouts into the ground if there isn't enough room for a rain garden. So this will require more technical considerations, and you will likely need to work with a contractor for a project like this one. Dry wells can be a standalone stormwater solution that you use instead of a rain garden, or they can be used in conjunction with the rain garden by adding capacity to that rain garden for any overflow that might occur. Another super fun option is a green roof, installing a green roof at home. So green roofs are great. They can reduce stormwater runoff rate from a roof by up to 65%. So that's a lot of rainwater that it's capturing before it even hits those downspouts. It can make roof surfaces 30 to 40% cooler and reduce heat flux from the roof to the building by up to 72%. So this would help decrease air conditioning needs in the summertime when it's real hot. It can also attract lots of birds and pollinators, right to your roof. So imagine if everyone had a green roof, we could decrease that heat island effect in our cities and provide, thousands of extra acres of habitat in our cities.
Yes, and like Amy said in an earlier slide, we do recommend that you do away with lawns where you can. These areas are the highest recommendation for removing lawn and making more space for things like shrubs, things like places like slopes, stream slides, shady areas, or heavy foot traffic areas. And again, this is because grass does not have a long root system that helps retain any moisture, while the native shrubs do have a complex root system that helps maintain moisture and prevents erosion. You can also, if you like the look of your lawn, but want to do something a little bit more environmentally friendly, you can seed lawn areas with things like yarrow, clover, dwarf perennial rye grass, or hard fescue. Alyssum and English daisies are also used.
All right, everyone, our watershed in the Clackamas here, like many others, is rapidly changing due to these human-caused changes and development, with many of our streams and natural areas being heavily impacted by these changes. So by stewarding your own space and helping spread the word about what you know, you can help mitigate these environmental changes on a community level. So here's a couple just final ways you can steward your own land at home. Again, replace those lawns where you can. We're really hitting that one hard, but it's important. Plant native trees and shrubs. So important. Many of our native wildlife species really rely on those native plants. They've formed very special relationships. And those native plants and shrubs have those nice, long, deep roots that'll really help absorb stormwater. And then just, when you're thinking about stormwater, think about the path that the rainwater will take in your yard and make any improvements where you can.
And then one final option for folks who are residents here in Clackamas County in the Clackamas Basin, you can take our Parting with Pesticides pesticide pledge to be pesticide free. You get an awesome little metal yard sign, and it shows all of your friends and neighbors your commitment to keeping the water clean. Just briefly, we do detect levels of pesticides in the tributaries of the Clackamas River. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out.